Our guest today has served as an officer in the military, and he's the host of an award-winning podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire. EOF has over 2,000 episodes of incredible content for entrepreneurs, which he uses to inspire over 1 million active listeners every single month. Mr. John Lee Dumas, thank you so much for taking the time and being on here with us today, sir.
I am fired up. I appreciate it. Let's get down to business.
All right. So I'm going to hit you with your own words and ask you to say hello to the viewers and share with them something that they may not know about you.
You might not know that in 2011, I won a car on The Price is Right.
Really?
I did it doing the hole-in-two putting game, and I terribly missed my first putt, but I drilled the second one, and I drove away in a Ford Fiesta.
Wow, nice. No, I didn't know that. So you're living in PR now, right?
Been in Puerto Rico for 4 years.
Wow. How are you holding up there? My business partner lived in El Dorado. He just moved back to the States last week, and he was saying those earthquakes there were pretty intense.
No, not really. He just can't hack it, unfortunately, so he doesn't enjoy Puerto Rico.
Yeah. So you're used to him at this point?
No, we really just don't feel them on this side of the islands. I mean, they're pretty
okay.
concentrated in the southwestern part.
Oh, okay.
Hey, not everybody can hack Puerto Rico, man.
Yeah. Tough life, huh?
Tough life. I mean, you're looking at my view right behind me.
Wow, that's incredible. So after the military, you went into corporate America, right?
I did.
And what was your breaking point? When did you realize that you had enough of this and you wanted to be an entrepreneur? What did that transaction period look like?
I was just dying a slow death in a cubicle. You know, I mean, I was just waking up every single day. It was like Groundhog Day, going in, making somebody else more money, you know, trying to, you know, smile and dial on a product and a service that I didn't even really believe in the first place. But, you know, it was just what I thought I had to do to make it in this world. But then, you know, I started opening my eyes up, learning from others, reading books, consuming great content, and realizing there's an amazing, big, wide world out there. And
yeah,
I could carve out the exact niche that I wanted to.
That's great. So when you started your podcast, was it with the intention on making a full-time income in the beginning, or was it something that you just thoroughly enjoyed and ended up becoming a lucrative business?
It was 100% with the focus of creating financial independence, lifestyle independence, and lifestyle freedom. Like that's just what I wanted. That's what I needed. So that was the goal from day one. I went into it with a business mindset that I was going to turn it into a revenue generating machine. And with that focus, I was able to do just that.
That's great. That's a great story. And from what I understand, EOF was your first real entrepreneur journey that you really tried, right?
It was my first swing of the bat. I mean, I've struck out on multiple things since then, but I am pretty fortunate that my first swing of the bat was a grand slam with EO Fire. I mean, again,
that's awesome.
I'm constantly making mistakes and having big flops and failures over the last 8 years, which I think is important because that means that you're actually getting yourself outside of your comfort zone, trying new things.
Absolutely.
But yeah. EO Fire is my first swing, and I was lucky to connect.
Yeah, that's unheard of. That's pretty awesome. I'm sure you're at a point now where you have people hitting you up wanting to be on your podcast, but it wasn't always like that. How were you able to consistently book entrepreneurs to interview day in and day out? Did you use social media, or how do you go about that?
You just got to be strategic. You have to say, where are my ideal guests right now? And when I actually went through that thought process, like, you know, shocking, I actually thought about it. I realized that, wow, you know, there's a ton of business conferences every single year. And what do these business and entrepreneurial conferences have? They have speakers.
Yeah.
And guess what? Those speakers have been pre-qualified, pre-vetted. They likely are really successful at what it is that they do. And they're willing to fly across a country to go speak for 45 minutes in front of, you know, 50 or 200 people.
Yeah.
Like, these individuals would probably wake up, pour a cup of coffee, and jump on an audio only call with me in their pajamas if I positioned it correctly. So I just went to Google. I typed in entrepreneur conferences and a ton popped up. And then I went to their websites. I clicked on the tab called speakers. And then I went through and vetted the speakers for what they were talking about. I did some research on them on LinkedIn and Facebook to see, and learn a little bit more about them. And then right there were thousands and thousands of potential candidates. And I just started sending emails and interview requests to them one by one. I got a lot of no's, but I got a lot of yeses. And then as you and I are talking today, I have way past the tipping points where now I get 400 inbound requests every single month of people wanting to be on Entrepreneurs on Fire for just 10 spots. And, a couple of years ago, we've implemented through supply and demands an appearance fee. So it is $3,500 to appear as a guest on Entrepreneurs on Fire, and has been now for years. So that is just an example of, when you have a show that is in such demand, that has built up such a big audience, that you're able to really, generate significant revenue in multiple ways.
That's incredible. That was going to be my next question. So $3,500, and then I'm assuming you still vet them, if you have to make sure that
there's an entire application process. They need to submit a video that my team goes over to see how they present themselves, how they talk, their energy levels. So there's a whole application process. I have a person whose full-time job is just to vet these applications.
Wow. Much night and day difference from when you started, I suppose, huh?
Big time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in your opinion, what makes a great podcast? What do you think has been the catalyst to your success?
A great podcast solves one specific problem. That's it. And that's for a podcast, and that's also for a podcast episode. So when you're looking to potentially make your own podcast, you need to say, what problem is this podcast solving? And if you can't answer that question with a very specific answer, then you're just going to be one of the 1,000 other podcasts that gets other entrepreneurs on and asks them random questions. But if you can answer a very specific question, and you can really be niche and dialed in with the value proposition of your podcast, you have a chance. And it's the same thing with every single show as well. You want to be delivering one massive piece of value and one awesome solution to a real struggle that your listeners have.
Wow. So do you use, when you're growing your podcast, did you ever use any ads or Facebook ads or Instagram ads, or how did you get it out there?
I never use any ads, and I've never met anybody that's successfully grown their podcast using ads, just because it's a tough game to justify ROI, return on investment on.
Yeah, true.
But for me, I was early to the game. And so I was able to get that first mover's advantage, and I was able to stay in front and to build the buzz. And when you have a show that's 7 days a week and I'm interviewing successful entrepreneurs, guess what successful entrepreneurs have in common? They have big audiences. So every day, my first email went to my guest whose interview just went live. And I said, Tim Ferriss, Gary Vaynerchuk, Seth Godin, your interview just went live on Entrepreneurs on Fire. You rock the mic. Here's all the links if you want to share with your audience your story. And when they did that, they were promoting my podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire. And that's how we've grown to over 1 million listens every single month.
That's great. From what I can remember, and from the research I've done, Tim Ferriss was really your big first interview, right? With your most successful entrepreneur?
Yes.
So did he reach out to you, or did you reach out to him? How'd that go down?
I was patient and I was strategic. I launched the best show that I could, and I recorded the best, highest quality episodes that I could. I built my audience in the best way I was able to. And then when Tim decided it was time for him to release his book, The 4-Hour Chef, I said, now Tim is in promotion mode. Let me go and make a proposition to him that he can't refuse. And I said, Tim, listen, your book is great. I've read it. I've loved it. These are my favorite takeaways. I know that my audience, Fire Nation, would love this book. Can you come on for 15 or 20 minutes and talk about it? And when I just made it a pure value proposition to him, it was a no-brainer. And once you get somebody like Tim Ferriss on the show, now all my future, emails that went out to prospective guests was, I've had past guests such as Tim Ferriss, Gary Vaynerchuk, Seth Godin, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you get that momentum built up and you have a couple people behind you, it does definitely make it easier for sure.
Very true.
So do you have any advice to new entrepreneurs who are starting out, not necessarily a podcast, but in general? We all know that journey from corporate America or your job, from that to entrepreneurship, I mean, it can knock your teeth out. What kind of advice do you have for a new entrepreneur starting out?
So many entrepreneurs fail before they even begin because they don't go through the proper process. You have to come up with a big idea. And this is your big idea, an idea that you have passion and excitement for, but also knowledge and expertise in. It has to combine those things. And then you have to niche down. Like, it can't just be the same broad, vague idea or concept that 1,000 other people have done before you. It's going to be different, unique, and niche, solving a specific problem. For instance, the day that I launched Entrepreneurs on Fire in 2012, I was the first daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. I was the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. I was the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs because I was the only
It didn't matter. Yeah.
daily podcast. If you wanted a daily podcast, there was one show in town. It's like, think back to those, small towns back in the 60s and 70s. There's one movie theater. If you're going to go see a movie, you have one choice.
Yeah.
One movie theater. And so, like, you got to create your version of that in the entrepreneurial world. You got to become the best and potentially only solution to an actual problem in this world.
Wow. And I think that's something that people struggle with a lot, is getting niche down, because everyone thinks that, what I have to offer can benefit everybody. Well, that may be true, but if you approach it at that angle, you're not going to be as successful, in my opinion. Like you're saying, you really got to get niche down. Do you have any advice on how to help people find their niche?
So once you have your big idea, you've got to look at that big idea and say, what are the biggest struggles that people are having around this big idea, around my big idea right here? And then you identify the biggest problems, and then you can choose yourself, which problem do I want to solve? And how can I niche down within that to become the best person delivering this solution? Like, that is the process. That's how you get that initial momentum, that initial traction, and then you can build up from there.
That's great advice. All right, sir. Well, I know you're busy. I don't want to keep you much longer, but I really do enjoy our time together, and I really appreciate you jumping on the show.
Hey, it was a blast. Hope everybody got some value from this, and I hope they go out and create their big idea.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. I'm going to use that strategy on getting speakers actually right now.
It's going to work 100%. Take care.